welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing something a little different. We're not looking at standard articles or, research papers.
The Marc podcast.
Right. The episode is titled Gen Z Struggles, Middle and Lower Middle Class, Heftfoot, Tolkien, and Gandalf. Quite a title.
It is. And what's really interesting for us, I think, is how it uses these, iconic literary figures.
Tolkien and Gandalf.
Yeah, exactly. It uses their sort of imagined perspectives to look at very real challenges facing, young adults today, specifically middle and lower middle class.
Okay, so our mission here, our goal for this deep dive, isn't just to summarize what this podcast said.
No, not just a summary.
We want to really dig into the insights about Gen Z struggles that come through this, creative format, this mix of modern issues and literary commentary. We want to get why these things resonate.
It's a really clever approach, I think. Using Tolkien and Gandalf as these metaphorical lenses. It gives a fresh angle, maybe cuts through some of the usual noise around these topics, makes them less abstract, perhaps.
Okay, let's jump in then. One of the first big themes that jumped out at me from the script was this whole pressure of, what people call hustle culture.
Oh, definitely. And Tolkien's analogy in the script is, it's quite potent.
What does he say?
Well, he compares this constant rise and grind mantra to the dwarves, in Moria, always digging, always working.
Okay, tireless work, yeah.
But here's the key bit. Tolkien adds the warning. The dwarves digging too deep awoke the Balrog. This nonstop hustle can awaken, quote, the Balrog of burnout.
Wow, the Balrog of burnout. That's a powerful image. It really captures that feeling of potential destruction, doesn't it? That this endless drive isn't sustainable.
Exactly. And it links it not just to ambition, but often, sheer economic necessity for many young people. It's not always a choice.
Good point. And Gandalf weighs in too.
He does. He brings up Aragorn. Aragorn's path to the throne, it was long, it was tough, it unfolded over years.
Right. It wasn't an overnight success story.
Precisely. So Gandalf, in the script, kind of questions why there's this expectation now for Gen Z to hit these massive milestones incredibly quickly. The script uses the phrase, sprint a marathon at a hobbit's pace.
Sprint a marathon at a hobbit's pace.
Ooh,
I like that. It really highlights that mismatch, doesn't it, between the massive expectations and maybe the resources or just the realistic timeline available, like asking for epic results on beginner stamina.
Yeah, exactly. There's this tension, right? Society pushing for speed, but real life, real growth is often slow, unpredictable. It makes you think, for anyone listening, does that pressure feel familiar, that need to always be on, always productive?
Okay, moving on. The script tackles another huge issue, the gap between school learning and, real-world survival skills.
Yes, the education disconnect. Tolkien apparently has a pretty sharp take on this in the script.
What's his angle?
He talks about the irony, schools teaching things like, the script says elvish poetry, maybe enriching, sure, but not practical for everyday life.
Okay, like high literature versus practical skills.
Right. Well, at the same time, maybe neglecting to teach how to handle, quote, orc taxes.
Orc taxes. I love it. So student loans, budgeting, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's a funny image, but it definitely hits hard. You can imagine someone acing exams but feeling totally lost with taxes or debt, knowing a language nobody actually uses day to day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Gandalf follows up on this. He asks, where is Gen Z's Council of Elrond? Where do they go for these crucial life skills?
The Council of Elrond for life skills. Like what?
He mentions budgeting, specifically, and also mental resilience. Gandalf apparently argues these aren't just nice-to-haves, they're fundamental quest requirements for adult life.
Quest requirements.
Yeah.
That frames it so well. Not electives, but essentials for the journey ahead. The script even had a visual cue here.
It did, yeah. A meme, apparently, of Gandalf face-palming with the text, "School's missing the mark."
Okay, subtle.
Yeah, it really underlines that feeling, doesn't it? That maybe the traditional path isn't fully equipping young people. Which leads to the question for listeners, I suppose. Have you felt that gap? Education versus, the practical stuff.
It's a common feeling, I think. Okay, the script then shifts gears a bit, looking at community and connection, but in the digital age. They call it the digital fellowship.
And Tolkien offers a perspective on this too, kind of questioning this new landscape.
What's his take? Is he skeptical?
A little, perhaps. He suggests that for a lot of Gen Z, Their shire, their home base, their community is now online. Platforms like Discord, TikTok.
Okay, that makes sense. They're social hubs.
Right. But the underlying question Tolkien raises is, can these digital spaces truly replace the depth of real-world face-to-face connection, a genuine fellowship,
Yeah, that's the big debate, isn't it? Quantity of connections versus quality.
Yeah.
Can a Discord server replace sitting down with friends?
It's a tough one. And then Gandalf comes in with a warning, a pretty strong analogy, actually.
Which is?
He compares social media to the One Ring.
Whoa. Okay. How so?
Well, he acknowledges it's precious, right? Valuable for connecting people, finding your tribe. But it can be corrosive in excess, like the ring itself. He even references the Palantir's curse.
Ah, the seeing stones that could show you things but also distort reality or be misused. That's insightful. So connection, but also potential for negativity, comparison, maybe addiction.
Exactly. The script apparently even showed a montage of Gen Z memes about doom scrolling, just endlessly consuming negative content online.
Right, that captures the feeling, that pull, but also the potential drain.
So another point for listeners to maybe reflect on, how does that digital fellowship One Ring analogy sit with you? Your own experience with social media, the good and the potentially corrosive.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, next up, the script tackles privilege. A tricky subject, but they frame it cleverly.
Yeah, as the invisible ring. Tolkien uses another visual analogy here.
Go on.
He contrasts those born with advantages, symbolized by Sting, Frodo's sword, sharp, glowing, ready to use.
Representing resources, opportunity.
Exactly. Contrast that with others who have far fewer resources, trying to face challenges armed with just, quote, splintered wood.
Oof, that's stark. It really highlights that inequality, doesn't it? That people aren't starting from the same place. Some have a much harder climb.
It does. But then, importantly, Gandalf offers a counterpoint, or perhaps a complementary perspective.
Which is?
He brings up Samwise Gamgee, specifically Sam carrying Frodo up Mount Doom.
Ah, the ultimate act of loyalty and support.
Right. Gandalf uses it to emphasize the power of support, resilience, personal effort. His message, according to the script, is that greatness isn't bound to birthright.
That's crucial. It acknowledges the systemic issues, the splintered wood, but also validates individual strength and the importance of community, of having a Samwise in your corner.
Absolutely. It's a balance. The script also had a graphic here, apparently just stating, privilege, the ring no one talks about.
Right. Pushing for more open conversation about it.
Yeah. It's complex, isn't it? It makes you think about these different rings of privilege, or lack thereof, and how they shape young people's paths today. What are your thoughts on that, listening in? How do you see this playing out?
Okay, so after those big themes, the script apparently shifted to a quicker pace, like rapid-fire points.
Yeah, they called them Eagle Eye Insights. Briefer takes on related issues. The first one was about gig work, side hustles.
Right, the side quests.
Exactly. They used a kind of funny image saying delivering food while studying isn't something Bilbo Baggins ever had to worry about, like dodging Uber Eats dragons.
Huh. Okay, so highlighting the extra pressures, the precariousness of that kind of work many young people rely on.
Pretty much. That juggling act of study, maybe career goals, and just needing to earn money now in a sometimes shaky job market.
Makes sense. What was next?
Mental health. Big one.
How do they frame it? Another metaphor.
A potent one. Anxiety as Gen Z's Khazad-dûm Bridge. That terrifying crossing in the dark.
Wow. And the question attached to that.
Where's the Elrond of therapy? Basically pointing to the need for more accessible, less stigmatized mental health support.
Yeah, that feeling of facing something huge and scary, maybe alone, without the right help. That resonates. What else?
They brought in Eowyn to highlight specific challenges for women and non-binary young people.
Okay, how?
The idea was they're breaking shields, fighting biases, barriers, but the script asks, why must they fight twice as hard?
So acknowledging those intersectional struggles, that added layer of difficulty due to discrimination.
Exactly. A really important reminder that experiences aren't monolithic within the generation. Systemic issues can amplify things for certain groups.
Very true. Anything else in the rapid round?
A bit of hope, maybe? Drawing on Aragorn's story again?
Okay.
And the point being, it's okay to be a late bloomer, Not all kings are crowned at 22.
That's a good message. Pushing back against that intense pressure for super early success we talked about earlier. It's okay if your path takes longer.
Right. It acknowledges different timelines for growth and achievement. And then one final, more provocative point in this section.
Which was?
It basically asked if unchecked greed, maybe within capitalism itself, is the real dark lord they're facing.
Whoa, okay. Sauron as capitalism.
Sort of posed as a question. Apparently, there was a visual of Sauron's eye over a stock market chart. It's definitely a more critical take, suggesting some root causes might be systemic, economic.
Definitely gets you thinking about the bigger picture. So, after diagnosing all these struggles and pressures, did the script offer any solutions? Any closing thoughts?
It did. It turned back to Gandalf first for potential solutions.
What did he suggest? More magic?
Not quite. More like practical paths. He talks about forging new paths, like apprenticeships, comparing them to dwarven crafts as valuable alternatives or additions to just academic routes.
Okay, practical skills training. Makes sense, given the earlier critique of education.
Yeah. And he also stressed the need for mental health sanctuaries like Lothlorien, places of refuge, support, healing, emphasizing safe spaces for well-being.
So, tangible ideas, moving towards action.
Yeah.
What about Tolkien's final thoughts?
His advice was more maybe philosophical, encouraging Gen Z to write their own lore, take agency, shape their own stories.
Nice. Empowering.
But he added a really crucial caveat, a famous line, adapted slightly. Not all who wander are lost, but some need better maps.
Better maps. I love that. So yes, explore, find your own way, but also acknowledging the need for guidance, support systems, clearer pathways through all this complexity we've been talking about.
Exactly. It ties it all together nicely, I think. Individual potential, yes, but also the vital role of society, resources, good guidance, the maps to help navigate everything.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into the Marc podcast script, we've seen this really creative use of Middle-earth, haven't we? To shed light on some serious challenges for middle and lower middle class Gen Z.
Definitely. The pressure cooker of hustle culture.
Right, the gap between school and real-life skills.
The whole complexity of online life, the digital fellowship.
And that often unspoken factor of privilege, the invisible ring.
Yeah, it's a really engaging way to look at these contemporary anxieties. Productivity, education, connection, social structures, all framed through this fantasy lens that makes it somehow more accessible.
It really does. Which brings us, I guess, to our final thought for you, our listeners. Think about those metaphors we discussed, the Balrog of burnout, social media as the One Ring, student loans as orc taxes. How well do those comparisons capture the challenges you see, maybe for young people or even in your own life?
And following on from Tolkien's point, what might those better maps actually look like? In practical terms, what kind of guidance, what kind of support is really needed to help navigate these pretty complex modern times?
Something to definitely ponder. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.